But someday, somewhere, someone may find out the damn truth. We better, or we might just as well build ourselves another government, like the Declaration of Independence says to, when the old one ain't working.
Like you, be strong to hold the powers of the sun.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Let's listen to Pavarotti.
Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I'm your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss, the Idaho 4 case. And the work that we are doing here is so important, and I'm going to prove it to you in this video. And it's strange that I would think that most people that had followed this thing, especially the ones that have broken apart all the details in this around certain aspects, would be all over this, but nobody is. So if it's just me, that's fine. But let me tell you, you think it's not having an impact? Well, let me show you something in this video. I firmly believe now that the prosecution watches my videos daily. No doubt. Because they have been working on setting up this certain aspect of this case, for a long time. They went through a lot of trouble. And a few weeks ago, they posted their motion in limine to put in records that were self-authenticated. And I went through that thing in a video with you and broke it down. Said, look, I've cracked the code. I know exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to put Kohberger at this store at this time and these people at these stores at this time. And I created a whole map and showed you how the state was going to try to create a nexus. And y'all may remember. So once I plugged it on their map, I had everything from purchases Bryan had made at Marshall's and Walmart to Kaylee's Petco purchases, everybody up in Ross, Target, Ulta Beauty, the Rite Aid, Winco Foods, they were all there at the same times. And then I took all their ATM withdrawals and showed where they were going to try to correlate that as well. Well, the only thing I got wrong was the Washington Trust Bank on Bryan was actually him removing money from the ATM that morning. That's why he made that trip over. And the Under Armour was not a purchase that was made there either. So what does the state do once I expose all that? It can't be a coincidence. Well, after all of their hard work, I got to say, I put it out there, showed everybody what it was for all that it was worth. And now when you get into the state self-authentication of records, everything that I exposed, state's going to no longer rely on. They're throwing it out of their case. They're not going to try that BS. Good try, state. But along with that, I also showed you, I don't think it was in that, might have been that video, or it might have been my, injustice, American Injustice BRYAN KOHBERGER video. But I showed you where the state was relying on all of their videos of BRYAN KOHBERGER on that evening. And what the state has now done is unequivocally annihilated themselves. And that's why that timing advance report now is so telling. What I'm going to show you in this video is the most dastardly thing that the state tried to do in this case, and it proves it. And y'all need to get this information out there far and wide. I don't know how we can get it out any further, but this is literally proof that the state lied from the beginning. Let me show you. All right, let me show you what happened here. This is going to be the state's new reply to the defendant's objection to the motion in limine about self-authentication. I want to put an F in there. Self-authentication of records in reliance. And they're going to go through and they're going to list an updated list of what they're actually going to be using and relying on as it relates to these records now. And remember, when it says the self-authentication of records, the only ones they can try to self-authenticate, but they're going to have to provide a certificate of authentication. But this would not include the Ring cameras on Indian Hills, 1125 Ridge Road, or the shop and house camera on Paradise. So those would not be included in these. They're still going to try to use those, but they're going to have to authenticate them in a different way. But all those business cameras, they should absolutely be in this list. And you'll see it starts with 1320 Linda Lane. Now, they are going to try to rely on that. Of course, it's interesting. The only time they want to rely on that one is going to be 3:29 a.m. when you see the car going across Linda Lane. All those other cars, yeah, they don't want to bring that up. So this is going to be the state's case, y'all, when it relates to the video on this. This is what they're wanting to use. Strictly 3:29 a.m. on Linda Lane, 1320. And then on 1330 Linda Lane, they're going to want to use from 3:30 to 4:07 as it shows the cars circling. Of course, they're not wanting to use 4:23 because if they showed that car leaving out, then they would be in trouble. Of course, when they try to show 3:30 to 4:07, if people have to sit there and watch it, they'll see gun rack guy go to the house at 3:50. I bet they don't want to do that. I bet they just want to use the clips of the car circling. Albertsons in Clarkston, Washington. They're wanting to use video footage from 1246 to 106 to show him in Washington the next day, which does absolutely nothing for the case. That bagel shop surveillance video, it's exactly what I told you it was. It's just simply there to document Maddie and Kaylee walking from the corner club down to the grub truck. That's all it is. Bank records for Bethany and Xana. Look at this. State no longer intends to rely on this evidence. That was showing them at ATMs at certain times. They were going to try to create a nexus. Banner bank records for Ethan. The state no longer intends to rely on this. That was another one of those, try to put him at a certain place at a certain time. Cafe Artista, I told you this was the cafe in between the corner club and the grub truck. And that's exactly what it is, and that's exactly what they're going to rely on. Footage is from November 13th at 1:40 a.m. This evidence provides a timeline of events for Caddy and Maylee, for Kaylee and Maddie. Is it Caddy and Maylee? For Kaylee and Maddie. That's all that was, so I nailed that one as well. Corner Club video, again, from 1020 to 137, timeline of events for Kaylee and Maddie. It's exactly what I said. They got the Corner Club video. They're going down. They got the bagel shop, Cafe Artista, and that farmer's insurance as well, but they're not going to use that either. Another Corner Club financial transactions. Costco in Clarkston, video from 11:59 a.m. the next day that has nothing to do with the atrocity. DeSales student records. This one is sinister. They're using his one of his turn papers on crime scenes as evidence against him, and I'll show you that in another video. Dick's Sporting Goods, that's where he bought the balaclava November 13th in Pennsylvania. I already showed you that one. Discover financial records, the state no longer intends to rely. Remember, they were taking her Discover records so they could find what stores she made a purchase in and what time. DoorDash records, we already covered this one. Early warning records, the state no longer intends to rely. That was Kaylee buying her vehicle. Elon Financial, they're not going to rely on that. That was Kaylee buying her vehicle. E&S Services, this is video that they're going to rely on at 5:26, showing the Elantra coming back into Washington State. Farmer's Insurance video, that was another video just showing Kaylee and Maddie walking down. They're not going to rely on that one anymore. Floyd's Cannabis. They screwed up right here, folks, because they put the time in, 3:02 a.m. When they see the white sedan going between Pullman and Moscow at 270, that's going to be huge. That's the entire case. Crypto records, they're looking for purchases. Again, grub truck video, just like we said, it's just documenting Kaylee and Maddie, nothing to do with Kohberger. Harbor Freight, well, they're not relying on that one anymore. Again, that was them trying to put them at a certain place at a certain time to create a nexus. No longer relying on this credit union. Remember, that was a ATM withdrawal I showed you. Indian Lake surveillance and records, no longer relying on that. That was in Pennsylvania. Joanne Fabrics, remember they were in that mall. They were trying to show they were here when Kohberger was here. No longer relying on that evidence. This is the traffic stop, traffic citation. Marshalls, all Kohberger making those purchases at Marshalls when the other people were making purchases somewhere else. States no longer intends to rely on it. They've given it up. National Weather Service, it was cloudy that night. Numerica Bank, again, this was ATM withdrawals, no longer intends to rely. PayPal, Venmo, they're probably going to do something with that. PNC Bank records, that's Kohberger's purchases. They're going to keep that in there. Pentella Data Records, that was a internet protection site. Pennsylvania and Credit Union, that's Kohberger's. Petco, where Kaylee was at Petco while Kohberger was at Marshall's, they're no longer going to rely on that evidence. Rite Aid, they were buying something at Rite Aid while Kohberger was at Marshall's, they're no longer going to rely on that evidence. Ross, no longer relying on this evidence. I mean, they gave it up. They gave it up that fast. Sunset Mart, this is the A&W Root Beer Mart, and they're relying on video evidence from only 3:28 a.m. on that one. Sunset Mart on Bishop Boulevard, they're relying only on video evidence from 5:25 and 5:26. Target, where they were all buying something at Target while Kohberger was at Marshall's, no longer intends to rely. TikTok for Xana, look, now it says to 4:16 a.m. Remember, that thing had been going, her phone died at 4:16. TJ Maxx for Dylan, no longer relying on that evidence. T-Mobile records, Umpqua Bank for Dylan, that was an ATM withdrawal, no longer relying. Under Armour, no longer relying on Under Armour for Kohberger, huh? UF Chef Store in Washington, oh, they got a lot of that video. They care about his little trip down to Washington that's not relevant. Ulta, you remember they were buying stuff at Ulta while Kohberger was at Marshall's, no longer relying. Walmart surveillance for BRYAN KOHBERGER, state no longer intends to rely. They were trying to put him at Walmart while they were over at Winco. Washington Department of Motor Vehicles, that's where he changed his license. Washington Trust Bank, now this one is his ATM withdrawal, and they've got pictures of it, and that's the one they're going to try to save with the return trip. Wells Fargo for Maddie, no longer relying. That was an ATM withdrawal. Winco Financial Records for Kohberger. Winco Financial Records for Bethany, Dylan, Kaylee, Maddie, and Xana. They were trying to put them at the same tour at similar times. Gone, no longer relying. They gave it up. After that video, they gave it up. But this is the giant part because there's no more after this. This is just parking records. And right here, we got Washington State University. Video surveillance for 5:28 a.m. to 5:30 a.m. showing suspect vehicle. Uh-oh. Folks, I just went through every business that they're going to rely on to show you pictures of BRYAN KOHBERGER's car. And I'm fixing to show you that the state, by doing it this way, just admitted to their major lie. There's no doubt in my mind the state wasn't prepared for some of us out here because what they've done in that self-authentication of records that I just showed you, I'm about to show you every camera from a business that they're going to rely on. And when you get into Washington State University, all those cameras are owned by Washington State University. And I showed you the ones that they intend to rely on. A lot of those cameras that they intended to rely on in the beginning in that PCA, you'll notice were not on that list. And let me show you why they weren't on that list. And it is going to annihilate everything, and people need to understand this because now it's fact. The state put it out. I think we'll all remember this. Investigators, it's the original PCA. Investigators were given access to video footage on Washington State University campus located in Pullman, Washington. A review of that video indicated that at approximately 2:44 a.m. on November 13th, a white sedan, which was consistent with the description of the white Elantra known as Suspect Vehicle 1, was observed on WSU surveillance cameras traveling north on Southeast Nevada Street at Northeast Stadium Way. At approximately 2:53, a white sedan, which is consistent with the description of the white Elantra known as Suspect Vehicle 1, was observed traveling southeast on Nevada Street in Pullman, Washington towards 270. 270 connects Pullman to Moscow. So remember, 244, 253, we've got Suspect Vehicle 1 here on the Washington State University campus. That is a huge part of the state's case because here's the state's case. Well, this was their state case back when the PCA came out. Was Kohberger left his apartment, came down, went northeast on Nevada Street, and then came back south on Nevada Street, and they captured him on camera both times at 2:44 and 2:53. But at 2:53, when they caught him, he was heading towards 270. And then the state is saying he went across 270 where he was caught at 3:02 on Floyd Cannabis Shop camera. That one is still in their authentication of record, so that is still their case. And then they're saying it went down here and they don't really know what it did until it came up to Indian Hills where it's caught on 3 Ring cameras and then Sunset and all these other Linda Lane and all these other cameras they have in here. So that was the state's case from the very beginning. This vehicle caught at Floyd Cannabis Shop was the same vehicle, Suspect Vehicle 1, that was caught on these 2 cameras on WSU campus. What Kohberger's team is saying is Bryan did not go this way, and that is not his car caught at 3:02 on the camera at Floyd Cannabis Shop. Therefore, he's not Suspect Vehicle 1. They're saying that the CSLI data shows Kohberger left his apartment and headed down here towards Wawawe, where it stopped reporting to the network at 2:54. And if they had the advanced timing reports, then they would be able to prove it unequivocally. And that means that at 2:54, if Kohberger's right here, then it is physically impossible for him to be 12 miles away at 3:02 just 7 minutes later right here. You couldn't do that if it was a straight line in 7 minutes, much less through all these twist turns, traffic lights, and everything else. So it's physically impossible. So the advanced timing records, if it proved Kohberger was here, it would prove he's not here and Kohberger's not Suspect Vehicle 1. That is the whole case. If this isn't Kohberger, he's not Suspect Vehicle 1, which means somebody else is Suspect Vehicle 1 caught on all those cameras. That is the entire case, y'all. Now, what does the state say to this very day now? We just learned in the court record that the state is now starting right here. This is Kohberger's car at 3:02 at Floyd Cannabis Shop, and then Suspect Vehicle 1 was next seen down here and made all the passes. This is now the state's case. They've abandoned Kohberger coming through and being caught on these 2 cameras. Why did they do that? Because they could no longer prove it due to that cast data. And let me show you how scared they are and how the defense needs to focus in on this because this is huge. By the state changing their case to this, and I'll prove that this is now their case, they are trying to pretend that those 2 sightings on Northeast Nevada Street and Stadium Way don't even exist. They're trying to make these 2 cameras, the footage on these 2 cameras catching that vehicle at 2:42 and 2:53, they're trying to make it not exist. They're trying to make it like it never happened. Watch this. When the vehicle came back the next morning, it was caught on Johnson right here at the Sunset Mart. And then again right here on Bishop at the EC business. And then they said they caught it on Nevada Street and Stadium Way. and then 4 other cameras going back to his apartment. And we all remember this, right? At 5:25, that white sedan was on 1300 Johnson Street in Pullman. And then the white sedan turned north on Bishop Boulevard and northwest on 270. And then at approximately 5:27, the white Elantra was observed on cameras traveling northbound on Stadium Way and Nevada Street, Stadium Way at Grimes, Stadium Drive, Wilson Road, Stadium Way at Cougar Way. Now they're trying to eliminate this camera footage of the vehicle on northbound on Stadium Way and Nevada Street altogether, even in the return trip. Look at this. We've got the Sunset Mart for Bishop, 5:25 and 5:26. They've got ENS Services, 1300 Johnson Avenue in Pullman, 5:26. But then when it goes to Washington State University video surveillance, they started at 5:28 to 5:30. What about 5:27 when you caught it on Stadium Way and Nevada Street? They're trying to eliminate that footage from the record altogether. They're trying to make it not happen even on the return trip. And this is just as much Washington State University footage as this. And some people are going to say, but wait a minute, Pavarotti, maybe he was caught at Bishop Boulevard, at Stadium Way and Nevada Street at 5:27, and there's just a discrepancy, and that's why they're saying 5:28. Well, I assure you that's not the case, because if that was the case, then they would also have it on here for 2:43 and 2:44 and 2:53 when he was leaving. And you see that's nowhere on here. And these are all of the state's authentication of records for business cameras. So by them not putting those on here, they're trying to make it like it never happened. So they're trying to eliminate the return trip. These 2 camera footages from the record. Why? Because then they would have to acknowledge that those 2 cameras exist, and that's what they said was suspect vehicle 1. And since that's suspect vehicle 1 on their cameras, it's obviously the same suspect vehicle 1 they captured right here at Floyd's Cannabis Shop. So if this is not Kohberger's car, then these are not Kohberger's car. And the same rule applies. If this isn't Kohberger's car, this isn't Kohberger's car. So this goes completely against their argument that Kohberger went this way and that's his car. Unlike the cast data said he went this way. They've tried to eliminate that camera from the record because it once again proves that isn't Kohberger. Kohberger went this way. Their goose is cooked.
Gathered surveillance video that they believe tied Kohberger to multiple locations in Moscow and Pullman. On the day of the murder at 2:53 a.m., WSU surveillance cameras spotted a white sedan traveling on Nevada Street towards SR 270, which connects Pullman to Moscow.
Folks, let me tell you, the prosecution trying to pull that move, that is a move of desperation. They realize that their goose is cooked. No wonder they're trying so hard to fight against those advanced timing records. Defense team, y'all need to be all over that. Don't let them inadvertently get that camera footage excluded because you need it. It's in the record. You need that camera footage in there because you know that's not Bryan Kohberger's car. And then all you have to do is prove that's not Bryan Kohberger's car there. Then that really proves it's not his car at Floyd Cannabis Shop. And it'll give you the backup you need for that cast data showing that he went the other way. Not to mention, if you're unable to actually obtain those advanced timing records, you're going to need some backup. And there it is right there. The state knows it, and they're trying to not include it into the record on their stuff. Unbelievable. They would get away with this stuff, folks, if we didn't watch them like a hawk. I'm telling you. But they need to know, and I'm sure they do know by now, that we are watching them like a hawk. Because there is no way they put in all that work on trying to create a nexus through the shopping centers and the ATM machines just to, within a week and a half of submitting their records, just to all of a sudden say, well, we're not going to rely on that stuff. We'll go in another direction. There's only one thing that happened between them filing that motion in limine and them filing that reply. And that was a video showing what they were trying to do. Thank you now. But I will stay on this thing, and there's so much information I'm going to bring to you. But as you can see, I'm going through piece by piece, and I'm going to bring it to you in the right way, because that's what we got to do at this stage of the game. Please like and subscribe to this channel. Post your comments, thoughts, criticisms. And until next time, Pavarotti is out.